Drew rises from the lake, and Willow's nightmare has only just begun. Oh, darlings, if you thought this week in Port Charles was going to offer any kind of relief, any moment of settling, any breath before the next storm, the show has a very firm answer for you. Because Drew Kane walked out of that lake, dripping wet, fully functional, and he went straight to Willow. Let us walk through exactly what happened and exactly why it is so extraordinary. Nina pushed Drew into the lake in a moment of panicked desperation, convinced that keeping Willow in Port Charles was worth the risk of what she was doing. She thought she had killed him. She genuinely believed Drew was gone. She called Jack and told him exactly that. And then Gio, who has apparently become the most consequential lifeguard in Port Charles history this summer, pulled Drew out of the water. Drew was not just alive, he was dramatically improved. The water, the struggle, whatever combination of physical effort and adrenaline that moment demanded, something clicked. Months of slow recovery compressed into minutes. Drew got out of that pool, and the paralysis that had defined his existence for so long was gone. He told Gio he was fine. He insisted he could get home on his own. And before anyone could fully process what had just happened, Drew was gone. Willow found out the way nobody should find out anything, through evidence that arrived before the explanation. Mud on the floor. An inexplicable mess she could not account for. And then she looked up, and he was standing in the doorway. Her husband. The man she shot. The man she imprisoned with drugs. The man she threatened to kill. Standing in front of her with full function and eyes that she described as full of something she had never seen in him before. He looked at her, and he said the words that are going to haunt every single person who heard them. I am so excited about what comes next. That is not a man who has forgiven and moved on. That is not a man who is ready to have a calm conversation with lawyers present. That is a man who has been trapped inside his own body for months, fully conscious, fully aware, unable to do anything about what was being done to him, and who has now arrived at the moment when he can do something about all of it. Drew is free, and Willow is terrified. And whatever comes next in that house is going to reshape everything. Jason comes home to Carly. Marshall arrives for the baby, and Trina and Emma want answers. Now, darlings, let us take a breath in the middle of the Drew chaos and talk about the warmer threads weaving through Port Charles this week, because not everything happening right now is terrifying. Some of it is genuinely beautiful. Jason and Carly. Two people who have been each other's constants through decades of impossible circumstances, through deaths and resurrections and mob wars and personal disasters, through every version of their own lives. When they finally sit across from each other this week, after all the time apart, after everything Jason went through, after all the changes both of them have been navigating, it is going to be one of those conversations that reminds you why this particular relationship has always been the emotional bedrock of this show. Carly has things to explain. Valentine. The months he spent in her home. How a tense alliance became something she did not plan for and did not entirely understand until it was already real. And Jason, who has known Carly long enough to understand that she does not fall into things casually, however much it might appear that way from the outside, is going to listen. He may have complicated feelings about Valentine specifically. He is almost certainly going to have opinions. But above everything, he's going to be there for his best friend in the way he has always been there. And Carly, seeing Jason back in front of her, banged up face and all, changed in ways she is still discovering, is going to feel the particular relief of having someone irreplaceable return to her. Meanwhile, Marshall is home, coming back to Port Charles to meet the newest member of his family. A baby boy who entered this world in dramatic fashion and who is currently surrounded by people trying to figure out how to coexist for his sake. Marshall's presence is going to mean everything to Curtis right now, because Curtis needs the grounding that only certain people in his life provide. And Marshall, who has his own complicated history with his family and has done his own version of becoming someone better through all of it, is the right person to be here at this particular moment. He is going to look at Portia and tell her she is radiant. And she is going to need to hear that from someone who means it without any agenda attached. And then there is the grilling that Jocelyn is about to receive, because Trina already knows about the deception, and now Emma wants the full story. These three women have been through too much together for Jocelyn to manage this conversation with careful deflection. Emma is going to push. Trina is not going to soften the edges of what she already felt when she found out. And Jocelyn, who has been carrying the weight of what she agreed to with increasing heaviness, is going to have to figure out how much truth she can give the people closest to her without setting off consequences she cannot control. Chase finally chooses his family, and the real Chase comes back. And now, darlings, let us close this week with something that has taken longer than it should have to arrive, but that landed beautifully when it finally did. Because Chase made a choice this week that proved everything he said to Brooklyn was not just words.
He was tested, and he passed.
Willow was frantic. She was heading out, trying to leave, desperate to get somewhere she could manage the situation on her own terms. And Chase arrived. She begged him, used every version of her most persuasive self, the one that has always worked on him, that has always found the particular frequency that gets through his defenses. She asked him to cover for her, to let her go, to be the person who has always been there when she needed someone. Chase said no. He brought her in for questioning. And then this is the part that matters most. He went home and told Brooklyn everything. Not a version of it. Not the comfortable parts. All of it. Including that Willow had asked him to go to Washington with her, and that he had shut it down. He told his wife his whole day. Completely. Without editing out the parts that were uncomfortable. That is the Chase who Brooklyn married. That is the man who was lost inside this Willow situation for too long. And whatever happened in those conversations between them, whatever Brooklyn saying I framed her and Chase sitting with the full weight of that actually shifted, it moved something that had been stuck for months. He is letting Willow be questioned without inserting himself. He is staying in his lane. He is coming home to Brooklyn and Phoebe and choosing them consistently and without reservation. The softness is back in him, not the defensive, tightly wound version of Chase that has been showing up lately, but the genuinely warm and thoughtful person who makes people want to root for him. Anna gave Chase an opportunity to work his way back toward detective. He is building something professionally. He is solid at home. And the man who is running around Port Charles as Willow's personal champion is being replaced by a husband and father who is finally showing up in the place where it has always mattered most. Brooklyn deserves this version of Chase. And Port Charles deserves to see what these two are capable of when the Willow distraction is finally, fully, in the rearview mirror. Port Charles is absolutely exploding this week, darlings. Drew standing in a doorway soaking wet and promising revenge. Jason and Carly sitting down at last. Marshall home for a baby who needs all the family he can get. Chase choosing Brooklyn for real this time. And Jocelyn about to face the two people who know her best and demand the truth she has been carefully managing. This is General Hospital giving us everything simultaneously. And every single storyline is earning every second of attention.